Hi, good morning. Hope you're doing well. We're in a series as a church on the book of Nehemiah, and just wanted to share a few things on it that I'm not able to share on Sunday morning. This morning, I want to talk about just the place of each of us having different giftings, different callings in life, and how God deals with us in different ways. This book of Nehemiah, it was written in the year 450 BC. Nehemiah is the cupbearer to the king of Persia. He's probably the second in command over the king's kingdom. And Nehemiah has a burden to rebuild the city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem lies in ruins. When he hears the news of it, he weeps, he fasts, he prays, and then he goes and he asks the king if the king will allow him to go back to Jerusalem to restore it and rebuild it. It's an amazing request that Nehemiah makes because to even be sad in the presence of the king, Nehemiah could have lost his life. The kings of Persia were not known for their diplomacy and their mercy to those under them. But Nehemiah goes, he risks his life to ask the king for a bold request. And amazingly, the king grants Nehemiah his request. He grants Nehemiah permission to go and rebuild. He even gives Nehemiah letters to share with the province. And he also gives Nehemiah horsemen and cavalry of the army to make the 700-mile journey from Susa to Jerusalem. It's an amazing act of faith, sacrifice, and also God's provision. What I think is neat about this is that God does this for Nehemiah, but there's another person who is a contemporary of Nehemiah. His name was Ezra. Ezra made the journey to Jerusalem to help rebuild about 13 years before Nehemiah did. One of the things we see about Nehemiah's journey, we see this in Ezra 8:22, that when Ezra goes before the king, this is what happens. Ezra says, "For I was ashamed to ask the king for a band of soldiers and horsemen to protect us against the enemy on our way, since we had told the king, the hand of our God is for good on all who seek him, and the power of his wrath is against all who forsake him. So we fasted and implored our God for this, and he listened to our entreaty." It's just neat there that Ezra didn't want to ask the king for cavalry. He told the king that God would protect them, so he doesn't ask, and the king doesn't grant them. God provides for Nehemiah by giving him a band of soldiers and horsemen. God provides for Ezra by answering his prayer for a safe journey. Two different men, two different callings, two different situations, two different scenarios, and yet God is with both of them. I think these guys probably would have had some neat conversation around the campfire at night. I'm sure Nehemiah would be throwing some boast of all that God provided for him in terms of horsemen and cavalry. I think Ezra may have been boasting as well about how he took the journey on faith, praying and seeing God answer his prayer. So I hope that encourages you just to think about how God has a different plan for you than other people. Sometimes we start comparing ourselves to others and what others have gotten. We can get discouraged because of that. Sometimes we just grow unfaithful with what God has called us to do because we're too busy comparing ourselves with other people. What we need to do is just focus on God, focus on what he calls us to, focus on what he has given to us and how he provides for us. We just need to look to him, look to his provision, fear him alone, trust him, and be faithful to him. Hope you can do that this day and hope that encourages you. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.